I'm never going to do propaganda. He would cut people up and feed them to the lion. I need to have a plan for what I'm going to put forward to the ummah.
So I guess my first question, bro, is how are you? What's the mood on the ground? How are the people there feeling? I want to say
Yeah,
congratulations.
I'm good, man. Yeah, alhamdulillah. It's to be honest, it's been a bit of a whirlwind
Yeah, can
roller
imagine.
coaster ride. I haven't really even got back home yet, so um, I haven't had a chance to kind of take it all in because it's just been how can I say, roller coaster of emotions, things that we've seen, things that have happened. Just been traveling up and down the whole country, kind of from city to city as they kind of were liberated.
Did you get
And
any good licks in?
of course, yeah, of course, it's got to be
Mashallah.
done in it.
You
But
got some.
subhanallah,
Did you get anything
yeah,
from any palaces?
no,
any
no,
ghanima?
I don't have sticky fingers.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm content just seeing the victories, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But uh,
Alhamdulillah.
but yeah, I mean, subhanallah, like being kind of holed up in these northern areas for all of this time, not just myself, but all of you know,
Mm,
this population of people, the Syrian people here in these areas, being deprived of their own country, and then all of a sudden this blast, this wave of taking over the whole country is it's
mm,
kind of unfathomable, and obviously there's different theories, analyses, and understandings out there, and I'm
mm,
sure we're gonna
mm.
delve into some of those. But yeah, I mean, it's there's good and there's bad. I think you've always got to be balanced. Enjoy the happiness, seeing people finally being able to go back into their homes, united with their
Yeah,
loved ones, but at the same time realizing that there's other elements here, and the work's just begun. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
yeah, yeah. What are some of the things that people are missing when they talk about Syria? Obviously, we're talking about it from far, thousands of miles away. We're seeing just online and news and that kind of stuff. What do you think are some of the things that we miss when we talk about Syria?
Miss in terms of understanding.
Yeah.
Um, so the way I describe it is there's layers, bro. There's layers, right? It's not one dimensional. So
Mm,
if we look at it as the bottom layer, the lower layer, as the kind of the layman, the normal person, and how it affects their life, um, then inshallah, like then at that level and at that layer, you're really happy. Alhamdulillah, country's been taken back, Bashar's gone, amazing. This oppressor, this zalim, has been uprooted, him and his family who treated this country as their own personal property for the last 52, 53
mm,
years, have been removed, and you can see the joy on the people's faces on that side of things. On that layer, it's amazing, and some people don't actually even understand that, which is crazy because they're like, they equate that happiness of people overthrowing a, uh, if you want to call it, a despot, a tyrant ruler. Just trying to take these notifications thing. Yeah. Um, they don't understand the happiness that people who have been aggrieved by this person and his
mm,
family systematically for all this amount of time. They've had generations of people harmed because of his family. They don't get that, and that's shocking. Most people should really understand that, and that's where there's some double standards at level one. Is that just on a human level, we should be able to see that these people are resisting a tyrant, evil ruler that was put in place by the colonizers, him and his family. Um, and this guy was a despot doing the dirty work for the West, rendition and torture of even foreigners were coming to Syria and being tortured, and then having
mm,
this iron kind of fist, this system. They call it the Nizam. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. The people, they don't call for the fall of Bashar. They call for the fall of the system. And you have to
Mm,
understand, even so yesterday I was in Damascus, saw some
yeah.
amazing things, but in talking about the Nizam, and I want you to understand this system, I
Mm,
was in this hospital where I filmed all of these dead bodies, people that had been tortured, right? And those had come from Sednaya prison, okay? The famous Sednaya prison. And there's other prisons in Syria that are famous, Sijin Adra, Sijin Kafar Suse, Tadmor. These are all famous torture chambers. But when I came to the hospital, and not just that hospital, other hospitals, I was like, this is like an extension of the prison. It was morbid, bro. The actual hospitals there are slaughterhouses.
subhanallah.
And what you have to understand, yeah, victories happen, but many of these institutions that were built by this Nizam still exist. So some of the female doctors there, they wanted to speak, but they were really afraid. They didn't want to, they couldn't let out what was going on. So Alhamdulillah, I managed to, convince some of them speak on a side. Even they didn't want to speak in the hospital. They were like, look, there's cameras here. There's people watching us. This is after the liberation. And then, one of the doctors, she didn't even want to tell us her name. And we were like, look,
Mm.
Bashar's gone, Bashar's fallen. She's like, Bashar's fallen, but the regime, parts of it still exist. So we were like, look, you need
That's
to
the
help.
thing I was thinking as well, because you can't. It's not just one man who's controlling everything with like puppet strings or everything. It's a whole system, right? Every layer,
Exactly.
it's got people that were loyal to him. People, the whole security industrial complex.
That's right.
Surveillance collaborators at every level. What do
At
you make
every
about
level.
that?
So in the Arab world, you've got like the collaborators that are like the dustbin men walking on the street and watching people, literally to that level.
Mm, mm, mm,
Then you've got like the different stages. You've got someone who will walk up to you with sit with a newspaper and look at you like this. This is how it is in the Arab world.
like in
So
cartoons.
you've got those levels all the way up to soldiers, to generals, etc. So it's really
Mm,
systematic. So anyway, when we convinced her that, look, you're safe and there's nothing to worry about, we managed to take her away from there. We met with her in the evening. She was basically saying that some of the like they had witnessed a lot of this torture, because obviously when these people are tortured, they're brought to the hospitals to be what's it called, treated and stuff like this. And then sometimes they would see even some of that abuse and torture take place in the hospitals themselves. And
subhanallah.
these hospital buildings are really scary, low ceilings, very old. And it's like, I knew she wanted to speak and she wanted to tell us a lot more, but we weren't able to get that all out of her. So on that level, inshallah, the falling of the regime, on that layer, the happiness that people feel, and this is slowly, obviously, the head of the snake has been crushed,
Mm,
inshallah, and he's dead. The regime still exists, and now obviously, alhamdulillah, the brothers are going after, and it's going to take them time to kind of disassemble this. So that's all good, positive news, right? But let's stay on this layer for a second, because it's really important to help people understand how deep seated and morbid,
mm,
and I don't even have words to describe it, bro. It's just pure evil, bro. Let me give you an example, right? So we were in Sednaya prison. Sednaya prison is this famous prison. The design of it is is designed in a way to be imposing.
mm,
Everybody's scared of this the name. Just like it's like the name that shouldn't be mentioned, right? And then within the prison you have Sijin al Abiyad, so the white prison, and then you have Sijin al Ahmar, okay, the red prison, the notorious red prison. Now, I just want you to put this in your mind, right? The white prison was liberated straight away. People came in, smashed the doors, all the prisoners came out.
mm,
Obviously in the liberation. So what they thought was that they had freed all the prisoners, not knowing that there's something called the red prison. Now, once they freed all the prisoners, what people did, because thousands of people went there, they smashed the TV screen, they ripped out all the cameras, not knowing that there's a hidden secret layer. Now it begs the question, if you are the ruling power, Why do you need to have a secret prison? Why do you have to have a prison with secret entrances and all of this kind of stuff? One, you must be doing some hella crazy stuff inside that place. But number two, they must have had in their mind that at some point there's going to be a revolution or something's going to happen or someone's going to attack the prison, because the prison itself, it's like a mountain. It's got like bunkers all around it. It's got tanks up there. It's like a fortress.
Mm.
But then you've got secret entrances, like in a kitchen. You go to a column, a pillar, you press a button in the pillar, then a secret entrance comes out from under like a big. It's like movie stuff, bro.
Wow.
Why? Why would the regime? You're a powerful regime. Why do you need to have secret prisons? There's one underneath an orphanage. There's one underneath a library. It's just it's crazy. So
What did they find
even
down
many.
there?
This is the thing. Many of them haven't been found. So now
Mm.
the official search teams, the white helmets, they've given up searching. They couldn't get into parts of this red prison. Um, whilst there's other family members and people that are just digging by themselves. Up till last night, I was there. There was people with these kind of metal rods. I forgot what they called, looking for kind of pockets or gaps down below, and they're just digging with whatever they can.
Mm.
And then you've got to talk about the sheer numbers, bro. I filmed a video where I'm walking 5 kilometers, bro, because we couldn't get our cars close to the prison. 5 kilometers we're walking, bro. Thousands of people are walking up this mountain to this prison. Okay, it's something like, when you're going to a football stadium to watch a football game, everyone's walking towards the football stadium.
Mm.
But these people are going to try and find their people who are lost. They say there's 300,000 people missing, bro.
Subhanallah.
300,000 people missing. So
Throughout the whole
the
country.
the majority of them must be dead, because a lot of these prisons have been liberated and the numbers that have come out are very minimal. So it just goes to show you this regime, the way it was built, even when it comes to taxing, even when it comes, there's so much to it. So at layer one, just the removing of this regime in itself, that is something that we as Muslims, we should all be happy about, because these
Mm.
people were suppressed, they were oppressed physically, they were they were not allowed to practice their religion.
Just quickly calculated that 300,000 out of the Syrian population. I just Google it. It says 23 million. That's 1.3% of the entire population was just vanished.
Yeah.
Subhanallah.
And then you're talking about obviously 600,000 killed in the war.
Yeah,
So
that's 3% of
it's
the whole population.
so it's crazy. I mean, the figures are crazy. So at that level, every Muslim deep down in his heart should be happy and say, Alhamdulillah, this evil regime and
Mm.
everyone who's supporting them has been removed. But
Mm.
now, when we move up to the next layer,
Layer number 2.
layer number two, and then layer number three, I would advise every person who's watching this, if you want to understand a little bit about how politics works and how the world works, there's a great book called Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky. Must
Mm.
read. It's improbable to believe that everything that has happened just now, the last few days, hasn't had external players. Now, I'm not saying that
Mm.
that is all necessarily negative. Some of that plays into the maslaha, the benefits of the Muslims, and we can't be privy. We can't be like, we can't just alienate ourselves from the politics. We have to understand, even in the time of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, there were political moves being made.
Mm.
I mean, one of the famous stories is Richard the Lionheart offered his sister, who was the queen of Jerusalem, in marriage to Al-Adil, who was the brother of Salahuddin. And he said, "You marry my sister, and you can be the king, a Muslim king, and she can be a Christian queen, and you can rule Jerusalem." And this put Salahuddin in a very tricky position, because if he said no to his brother, you can't marry the queen, he might have an issue with his brother. His brother's like, look, man, you know, why, this is a great opportunity. Um, but at the same time, so that was a political move by
Mm.
Richard the Lionheart, and then obviously he had made that promise without the permission of his sister, who refused. I think I'm quite certain it was his sister, and then obviously he reneged on his promise. But the point is, Salah ad-Din did agree in the end. He said, "Look, he was good with that." But the point is, these political moves sometimes
Mhm.
they have there's mutual benefits, and that's what's important to understand. So when you start going up the layers, you start seeing the strings that are being pulled, and this is
Mm.
where things get murky.
Yeah. So I mean, you've lived in. I mean, you've lived in Syria. You lived under various kind of rebel groups. Um, you even famously, you were arrested yourself, detained, tortured. Mashallah, you came out um, strong. What do what would you say in terms of going forward? And I mentioned this before, like before we started recording, and yesterday I said, look, let me know. I don't want to get you in trouble or anything. And you were like, no, bro, nothing's off the table, and
Uncensored,
uncensored
bro.
and stuff.
Islam
But I don't want to
21
get you.
see uncensored.
Obviously, we have to be wise and stuff. But what do you see? Are you hopeful for the way things have panned out in terms of that realpolitik on the ground? In terms of, you know, okay, we hopefully we should all understand that on the level of the the average Syrian, Alhamdulillah, this is a blessing removing a dictator. It looks from an outsider's perspective that the brothers kind of coming out and leading this, although it's not just one group, but it's fronted by HTS is kind of the
Yeah.
um been been in the kind of interviews and been
They're the
supported, and
forerunners. They're the
the forerunners,
forerunners.
yeah. And even our own governments now, they're scrambling to review their proscription status and that kind of. It's probably going to be de-proscribed as a terrorist organization and stuff. What are your thoughts when you see that kind of stuff? Because you, for example, they took away your passport, our government, for just for just being there, basically doing charity work and not even being affiliated with these groups. Now you're seeing these groups, there's talk of them being decriminalized and kind of taken off these lists. What's going through your mind right now?
So yeah, I mean, like obviously, when it comes to the situation, right? I believe we should always be hopeful, but at the same time, we should be realists, right? So that means that in this situation, um, we have to recognize that there's a lot of sincere people within these groups. But of
Mm,
course, like I said, there is deals being made, right? So now, if those deals are in the benefit of the Muslims, the Ummah, and the Islamic project, then that's a good thing. And if that's
mhm,
going to improve the living standard and the lives of the Muslims here, then Alhamdulillah, inshallah, right? That's
mhm,
that's all good. But like you said, bro, these uh, for example, now this issue of them being removed or from the prescribed terror organization group. In
mhm,
my mind, it's like, okay, that's really interesting. Um, why the rush all of a sudden? What concessions have been made for that, right? Because that's not something that we know as Westerners living in the West, that comes for free, right? It's not something that just, hey, we're going to take you off the
mm.
terrorist list. You're a good guy now. Doesn't doesn't really work
I mean,
like
it
that, right?
shows that there's usually, when it comes to Muslim groups, I've seen it. There's not much logic that goes into it. It's not really about morality or right and wrong. It's about political. These people are against our interests, so we'll label them as terrorists. These people are our allies, so we won't label as terrorists. It's kind of that kind of thing. So whether someone's labeled or not labeled as a terrorist, it's it shouldn't conjure that. It doesn't conjure that much kind of kind of a crisis or relief in my head. I'm just thinking practically, you know, um, what somebody's been advising them, because the stuff they're saying as an outsider looking at it could be all propaganda, Allah knows, but from my perspective it looks like, okay, these brothers, they're saying all the right things, even Islamically they're not like, nutters kind of running around doing crazy stuff. They Islamically it
Yeah,
looks like
yeah.
they're being advised by,
So
scholars,
look,
or you're being advised by like media people. This is, how you present yourself, and all that kind of tolerance and justice. It looks like from the outside, but is that really the case on the ground?
okay, so again, so even layer two. So this is, let's bring it up to layer two. So layer two is
Hmm.
this, is what they're saying and doing now. Okay, if we take what they're saying and doing now, then I'm
Mm,
really hopeful, because what they are actually doing and what they're actually saying is brilliant. They are
mm,
safeguarding the minorities. I've seen it and I've reported it myself. That's not propaganda, and I'm never going to do propaganda. Do you understand?
mm, mm,
Um, I've sat with the Syrian communities. The first time in my life, I've taken a picture next to a Christmas tree. I did that for a reason, because these guys, we don't want misinformation to be out there
yeah.
that they're oppressing these people. They're not. The reality is, one
Mm,
of their individual did go and break a Christmas tree. That was reported to them. They went back. They admonished that person. They put the tree back, and they rectified the situation. So
mm,
these things, we've been talking to them for a long time about this, saying this is from Islam. We shouldn't do this.
mm,
Now, so in terms of what they're doing, talking the what's the word? The announcements that they've made to the Shia, the announcements that they've made to the Christians, the Druze, the announcements that they've made to all of the minorities, even when it comes to um, forgiveness. They've done something similar to what the Taliban done in Afghanistan. Is that, look, if you were a soldier and you fought us man to man in combat, no problem. You give up your weapon today, and you have aman. You have a covenant of safety and
amnesty.
security. You have
Mm,
amnesty. And they did that, and there was mass defections. We saw mass defections, people handing in their weapons, etc. But if you have the blood of civilians on your hands, you've been involved in torture and doing these crazy kind of things that were going on, then you will face
mm,
the wrath of the law. Like, just 2 days ago, they caught one of these generals that had a lion and literally would feed people to the lion. Like, literally,
oh,
he's got photo ways to pose with his lion, and he would cut people up and feed them to the lion. Alhamdulillah, a couple of days ago, he's been caught and he's going to be, dealt with. We're hearing that he's going to be executed. And I'm for
mm,
capital punishment, especially for people like this, evil people like this. So, and I don't make no bones about it. There's no contradiction that America does it. America, killed an imam recently for
yeah.
doing a murder, which apparently, even the prosecution was saying, he shouldn't have been, found guilty. But now, if we're talking about someone who's a war criminal that's been torturing people and then chopping them into
Mm.
pieces and then feeding them to lions, I don't see no issue in that person facing
As long
capital
as there's due
punishment,
process,
as
if
long as
there's
there's
due
due process.
process according to the Sharia, according to
That's it.
just justice, yeah.
Due
Mm,
process. There's witnesses. This guy did this and this and
mm,
this.
mm,
I mean, with people like this, it's documented. It's like they were so arrogant in what they were doing. They were just doing it openly.
mm,
Um, so, alhamdulillah, cases like that are very easy. But yeah, I mean, so that's the second layer in terms of what they're saying and what they're currently doing is
yeah.
really, really good. I mean,
Alhamdulillah.
even in terms of myself, I've been given access, no issues. Do you understand? Even uh, despite the previous issues that we've had in the past. So I'll be really honest and say that what I've seen from them politically in terms of implementation, they're trying their best, even when it comes to theft, they're stopping people from stealing. They're really making an effort. When it comes to the media, it's been on point. When it comes to making sure their soldiers are not transgressing against people, putting telephone lines out there. So if anything, I mean, they've really pulled out all the stops. Yeah, that stuff is
Mm,
all 100% true, and they're really making an effort. Okay. But then when we move up to layer three, this is where, like I said, this is where things become kind of, you have to start asking the questions, right? Like the natural person. And
Mm.
And I'll hope they'll understand, even if they're listening to this, that look, people are going to ask these questions. Like now, just yesterday, Deir ez-Zor was liberated, and the oil fields are now the oil field that's there. It's called I forgot the name of it now, but now it's under HTS control. It's like wow, 5,000 barrels of oil a day under HTS. Americans and the Kurds are just gonna hand that over to HTS. For me, that sounds that sounds very interesting. Similarly, people rushing to get their names off the prescribed list. These are all good things. I'm not saying that they're necessarily bad things, but what that indicates to me, some deal was made at a high level, and it seems that America, for me, is
Yeah.
the guarantor. That's what my analysis would point to. Especially, I mean, during the fight, I mean, there was real fighting that took place. This wasn't all theatrics. There was real fighting that took place, but of course, it's very clear that the Russians lifted their hand
Yeah.
in the early days, in the beginning of the battle in Aleppo. They physically pulled out. There's video footage where they just retreated from
Mhm.
bases, and the Iranians and Bashar's army, the Syrian Arab army, were just like, guys, where you going? Where you going? And that panic kind of spread. I mean, because we were here, we saw that panic spread amongst
Yeah.
their forces, and we saw the morale raise on this side. And so that, um, that allowed for the rebels to be able to, fight. They had a real fight,
Yeah.
and it showed that, if Russia hadn't intervened in 2017, the country would have been liberated a long, long time ago.
Yeah. So,
Um,
yeah. I
and
know.
I think there's mutual benefits for a lot of countries. If we're gonna be a bit balanced, there's mutual benefits for a lot of countries. Russia, for example, is embroiled in a war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
They wanted to find a solution. It seems to me from leaks that I've heard that they were trying to come to some resolution, and every time Bashar was refusing to even sit on the table with the Turks, and you know
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was haltering or hindering
And
the,
we
the,
had
the
a really good.
process.
I had a really good conversation with Dr. Anas Takriti yesterday. He was talking. He was just explaining that there has been things that he's seen and he's heard. For the last few months, that this is there are regional actors involved. This is the how geopolitics works. And he said the U.S. in particular, it's very good at when it comes to anything that happens, to going in there and trying to make sure. He said it's not like they control things or they can control everything. No, but whatever happens, they send in people to make sure that they can get the best, in the
Make
best out of
sure that
whatever
their
happens.
interests,
Yeah,
yeah,
make
make
sure
sure
that
their
the
interests
interest.
are safeguarded.
Yeah, or if there's a
So
choice between two people, they'll try and choose the course of action that's best in their that gives them the best interest, or preserves their interest. And any state does
yeah, yeah,
this. Unfortunately, that's the system we live in. And yeah,
100%.
you know, um, the Iranians are busy with, and Hezbollah are busy on one side. The Russians are busy in Ukraine. Bashar al-Assad, in his arrogance, he's just and his despotism, just refusing to um, you know even do anything, right? Just that kind of drunk on power, that kind of pharaonic thing. It led to his downfall, and the rest is history. But do you think so? I mean, I agree with you that it seems on paper, in the public kind of discourse, and obviously you're not you would never do any propaganda. You just say it as it is. From the perspective of what they're saying, it looks like they're ticking all the boxes Islamically. They're not kind of nutters or whatever. They look like they're being advised by scholars about who knows, and people who know what the Sharia is, telling them to do. Do you think that can? I mean, we all hope. Do you think? Do you see that if that can translate to a state level? Actually running a state, modern state, is a very, I'm assuming, I've never done it before, but I think it's a very difficult thing. But do you think they've got what it takes? And are they including other people, other groups, and in some kind of transitional, you know, government or system or?
I think with the HTS project, they've had a pilot model in Idlib. So they had a small city, or the smallest city in the whole of Syria, and had some territory, and they were able to administer that better than the northern areas where there was a mixture of lots of different Free Syrian Army groups. That's clear for the majority of people. I think most Syrians would agree to that. So if we're talking about economically, yeah, there was some monopolization, but in terms of developing the areas, in terms of fixing the roads, in terms of having law and order, those areas was, you could say, a lot more organized,
Mm.
right? And you could see that. Whereas, of course, being in territories where there is many different chiefs, then there comes issues with that. But likewise, one of the problems, and this is where we had our differences with HTS, was the judicial system, and due process not happening. Now, after that whole kind of escapade, things have got better in certain places, but it's not where it needs to be, and there needs to be improvement. And I'm hoping, and I think everybody else is hoping, that that's where, inshallah, improvements are going to be made.
Mm.
I think nobody wants to see Sednaya Part Two. Nobody wants to see this level of morbid, you know evil, torture, and kind of at this mass scale. So HTS has been known to you know not be the most just to its competitors, and I'm choosing my words wisely. Um, and that needs to change. They need to be more Islamic on that side of things, of dealing with Muslims, dealing with difference of opinion. And I think, look, if I'm being honest, it's one of those things where we live in the Western world, and certain things that we take for granted have become embedded inside us. So, for example, we live in states where you have a separation of powers, you have, freedom of speech to a certain extent. I mean, these are all relative, right? So there's percentages. Certain countries will have
Mm.
more. There's less censorship. There's a free press in a sense. Okay, so we take these things for granted, and we see them as given rights. Whereas in the Eastern world, they've never had these things. And they don't understand the benefit of these things being there. Even when we're
Yeah.
talking to the normal sort of people and saying, listen, guys, you need to organize yourselves into bodies and have this, and this is the way that you can affect policy if you're speaking about certain things and doing things.
Yeah.
Some people don't actually get that, right?
I mean, they have, or let's I mean, say that they haven't had this in the modern period since colonization and the systematic destruction of of traditional systems where you would
Yeah,
have
yeah.
more obviously justice and so forth. Yeah.
So like that's why like they need time. They do need some time. If I'm being fair,
Mm.
they need time, but at the same time, they need to be able to. Like I give example some of the other good moves that HTS made in this recent, um, you know, what's it called, offensive, was many of the political prisoners that were inside their prisons, Muslims, they released them. They said, you know what, we're going to let you out because we know you can help the cause. And that won a lot of people's hearts. That was like, wow,
Mm.
that was a good move to do, right? There's still some political prisoners inside. Okay, so they made a lot of good moves like that to try and win people over and say, you know what, and they reached out to many people who were opposition to them and brought them to their side. And there's people that were, you know openly, you could say, antagonizers, or people that, some of them were defectors that were speaking out against HTS publicly. Now they've rejoined their ranks. So they made a
Mhm.
concerted effort to do that, whether that was, helping people to understand, look, we're changing our direction, we want to do ABC, or whether it was financial incentives or
Yeah.
whatever it was, they've made that effort. So they are
Mm.
making changes. Are they perfect? No. I would say we need to, inshallah, hope for the best, and we need to try and at the same time as well, only time's gonna tell where this is really gonna go.
Mm.
I
Mm.
say enjoy it for now, but at the same time, we've got a lot of work to do as a ummah, and even externally, as Muslim bodies, we need to organize ourselves. We need to put ourselves in a position where we can influence, and put pressure on these Islamic groups when they are, faltering, or when they're making those mistakes.
Offer
I think
sincere advice, kind of thing. If they're,
not
hopefully
not
they're
just
open
office.
to receiving advice and criticism and changing, policies that are problematic.
I think sincere advice is good, and that's important. But the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-dinu
Mhm.
nasiha," right? The religion is sincere advice. So that's a part of it, and the hadith goes on to say, "Liman ya Rasulullah," and part of that says, "A'immat al-Muslimin wa amatiha," the leaders of the Muslimin and the lay people. And this is where some groups of people say, you shouldn't be giving nasiha to the leader. Who are you? No, the Prophet ﷺ told us, we should give advice to leaders of the Muslimin. So that's one thing. We shouldn't conflate giving advice as khuruj, rebelling against the leader. That's one thing that's really important, which a lot of people
Mm.
conflate. The second is that there is a sense of physical pressure. So the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, "Ansur
Awesome.
akhaka zaliman aw
Zaliman.
mazluman," help your brother if he's oppressed or he's the oppressor. So we've heard this hadith many, many times. And when the companions asked, "What do you mean? We know how to help the one who's being oppressed, but what about the oppressor?" He said, "Lift his hand." So what does lifting his hand mean, or removing the oppression, or stopping it? What does that mean? So now, in this era, in this stage that we live in, I believe that there needs to be Muslim pressure groups,
Checks and
lobbies,
balances.
think tanks. These are checks and balances, because we
Mm.
live in an era of globalization. Everything's connected. So now we should be in a position, and we as Muslims in the Western world should be mobilizing, putting ourselves in a position where we're not just giving nasiha, we're not just saying, "Brother, please, no, no." We should put ourselves in a position where we can say, "Listen, if you guys don't fix A, B, C, D, then we will talk to certain governments, or we will make sure certain aid is not going your way, or we need to be on that
Mm.
level." This is what other people in the world are doing, and that's why
Mm.
these things can happen. So we as Muslims, we have a lot of power, but we're just not organized, and we're not thinking in that manner. Like, why couldn't we have, for example, we have a strong Muslim community in the UK. Why couldn't we have a pressure group?
Yeah.
Why couldn't we build a group that can have an impact on policy making in Pakistan, for example? Why not? Why?
Subhanallah.
I, I
Whenever I
believe, I
speak to you,
believe
always, mashallah, you're always coming out with these high level, creative solutions, mashallah, tabarakallah. It's not about just the immediate, but think of programs, think of systems, think of, institution, organization, structures that we can make. I was going to actually ask you, what what is the ummah's duty now when it comes to, okay, looking what's happening in Syria? What's the ummah's duty? What is me sitting in the UK? What can I do? What should I be doing?
the ummah's duty again is on layers, right?
Mm.
Like, my thing is, the reason why I think like this is because I started to realize that, and I've maybe told this story many times before, but the first time I saw a girl die in my arms, actually, it wasn't the first time, actually, but there was a famous incident where I saw a brother digging his children out of the rubble, and one by one we helped him take his kids out of the rubble, and they were all dead, right? And I remember the scene. I remember it clearly because everything was dust, like dust gray. And I remember he picked up one of his daughters. I handed him to her. He put his daughter on his shoulder, And as he was walking towards the pickup truck to put his daughter and where the rest of his children were killed, the whole image is grey. The little girl is all grey. She must have been about 7 or 8 years old. His back, everything is just dust grey. And then a streak of blood came pouring, bright red blood came pouring down his back. Out of all that grey, it's like Schindler's List, the movie,
Mm.
right? That bright spark of red just pouring down his back. So that airstrike was a coalition airstrike. That wasn't Bashar. That wasn't the Russians. That was a coalition airstrike. Okay. Now they say that they were targeting um, terrorists or some terrorist weapons factory, and we actually broke the story. Myself, Bilal, mashallah, and we proved that these were American weapons that were used. I think they were Hellfire missiles, and alhamdulillah, that brother actually ended up getting compensation, right? Okay, in this strange, cruel world. Not that it means anything, because nothing is worth the value of all your children being killed. But at that moment, I thought to myself, I said, "Wow, we are so powerless. We're here, and a missile has flown halfway across the world, killed our Muslim brothers and sisters here. Someone sitting in a room with a joystick from a Reaper drone, and these kids are now dead. It can't we can't carry on like this. We need to start thinking long term. Do you understand? You know, picking up an AK now and trying to shoot the drone is not going to work. Do you understand? We need to start thinking about long term solutions. So this is why it
Mm.
comes to layers. Now, as Muslims in the UK, layer one is me now. The way I have a plan for myself in terms of my career, okay, I need to have a plan for what I'm going to put forward to the ummah. Okay. Does that mean now my plan is I'm gonna go on a Sunday outside the masjid and give out food to the people? Alhamdulillah, that's good. That's great. But we need to start thinking bigger than that in terms of, look, we need to start organizing ourselves. We need to start thinking about how we can engage in the political process as individuals. That's number one. Um, and start thinking about solutions, institutions, building institutions, right?
Mm.
So so that obviously building institutions comes at a bigger layer. People, okay, if someone's gonna say, okay, what am I gonna build as myself? So level one is yourself. What can you individually directly do it yourself? Level two, I'd say, is your children. What is my plan for my children? Is my plan my son's gonna be a doctor? You know, Doctor, ante, you're gonna be a doctor, okay? Or is my gonna be a son gonna be a doctor that has Sharia knowledge, that is going to be engaged in helping the ummah? And I'm constantly reinforcing that in his mind, that son, you're
Mm.
privileged to have this education, and inshallah ta'ala, you're going to grow up and you're going to help the ummah and you're going to sacrifice. We don't want you to think about the dunya, right? And then it comes the level above that comes in terms of organizing your community, building institutions. And a lot of this thinking, someone that I really like and I advise people to listen to, is Dr. Tariq Swaydan. Dr. Tariq Swaydan speaks a lot about this
Mhm.
kind of stuff. It's
Strategy.
important. We have to just start. The problem is most people, a lot of the Muslims are well wishing. They're like, I mean, I get these messages all the time, bro. What should I do? What should I do? I'm like, bro, like, just start anything. Just start.
Mm.
Just even if it means you sit once a week with your local brothers and just say, look, guys, what can we do for the ummah? Eventually, you'll come up with something. But if you're sitting on the sideline, disengaged, then nothing's gonna happen. And I think us as the UK community, the UK Muslim community, we are advanced, more advanced. I mean, most people would say we're more advanced in terms of the da'wah and our institutions than the rest of Europe and even maybe America. But we've still got a hell of a lot of work to do. We've
Mhm.
still got a hell of a lot of work to do. If we're just happy with that, then we're not
Yeah.
gonna see change. We need to start being
Mm.
innovative, thinking about these long-term solutions. So yeah, in regards to Syria specifically, what's your role in terms of Syria specifically? Yeah, we need to again organize ourselves. Say, I mean, one of the things that kind of saddened me is that over the years, you have people who are disengaged. Now the victory comes. Everybody's like, bro, get me to Syria, bro. I want to come to Damascus. Bro, where were you 13 years ago, bro, when we were eating bombs and bullets? And
Subhanallah.
now the victory's come, everybody wants to come. Do you understand? It's sometimes it can be a bit disheartening like that, you know?
Mm,
But at the same time, this stage is a new stage and Syria still needs a lot of help. We need to rebuild Syria, not just uh, structure wise and financially, economically. If brothers, one of the things that we talk about divestment and sanctions and boycotting Israel, but okay, but what about investing in our Muslim
mm,
countries? Like I
mm.
see now, Muslim businessmen should be rushing to Afghanistan, man, and going there and building businesses.
Instead of China.
Now, yeah, if Syria instead of China, if Syria becomes stable, bro, rush to Syria and say, you know what, we're gonna build jobs here and we're gonna. That's the way we need to be thinking.
Mm,
So there's so many different spheres. It's not one dimensional, bro. And
mm,
a everyone can have a part to play, a role to play in it. But we need journalists, we need people. I mean, the key word out of all of this, take all of this away, there's one key word, bro, and it's sacrifice. If you want to see victory in the ummah, if you want to see change in the ummah, then know that our forefathers and our ancestors and the best of mankind, the Sahaba, what they understood is that we are willing to sacrifice everything for this deen. I'm not telling people sacrifice everything, bro, but just sacrifice 10%, 20%, bro. And inshallah,
mm,
that if we all do that, it'll make a massive difference. But the reality is, if we look at ourselves as a ummah, we're not willing to do the hard things, bro. We'll make a song about Palestine. We'll, go to a protest. We'll do those things that don't really pose any risk to us. And the reality is that if you're gonna do that, then what are we really gonna achieve? Any movement that has ever succeeded has had to pay a price,
mm,
right? If you look at the Black Civil Rights Movement in America, people had to pay the price. They were in prison, they were killed, they were lynched, etc., etc., etc. So you think today you're going to make a change in the ummah by what? Giving what did they say? They say pennies. You're gonna give pittance. What do they say? Pittance, something like that.
mm, mm,
You're gonna give your leftovers. You're gonna give your leftovers. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. Allah subhanahu wa
mm,
ta'ala wants to see what we're going to give, what we're going to put forward. And when we start collectively doing that, then inshallah we will see change and victory. And obviously, the primary part of that, which obviously there's the physical side of it, which is thinking about it and putting these plans together and actually doing stuff and sacrificing your time and your wealth and stuff for the sake of Allah.
mhm,
Obviously, there's the other part, which is the Rabbani part, is which we have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do the things, that's a precursor to victory, right? That we have to start, you know following the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing what needs to be done, not be people
mm,
of of vice, but they're connected. Do you understand that if your iman is weak and you're doing sins and you're doing haram and you're doing these things, you're never going to sacrifice for the ummah,
yeah.
because you can't even get a grip. You can't even get a grip of yourself. Do you understand? Like, you're finding it difficult to control your own vices. So how are you going to give up some of your rights for the sake of other people? You won't be able to. Does that make sense? And
Mm,
and that's where
mm.
we are, man. That's where we are. Allah
SubhanAllah.
knows best.
Jazakallah khair, I've been just jotting down a few things that you've been saying. So, we need to be people of vision, have a long-term strategy for yourself, for your kids, for your community. I love this idea about pressure groups. I know a few brothers working on this in the US as well, like they have PACs, public affair committees, I think they're called. The pressure about, from these countries, we have this, privilege, ill-gotten from for these countries nonetheless. But while we're here, we have these privileges. There's aid that goes in. There's all types of political, economic pressure and strings detached from our governments, our states. We have to be in a position where we can get, you know, we can influence positively what happens in other countries. You mentioned Pakistan, Syria now. We need to invest. Okay, if somebody has wealth, somebody has business acumen, invest. We have to be prepared for sacrifice. Do things that in the presence of fear, the presence of cost. Get to a level we're doing that kind of stuff. Another thing Dr. Anas mentioned was, for example, give expertise. There's going to be such a need for expertise now to rebuild a country from rubble.
100%.
Teachers, doctors, child psychologists, all kinds of expertise. Even he
Everything,
said
everything.
just digging to find prisoners in these bunkers. There must be expertise out there in the world, and we need to as communities, create structures for people who have those skills to avail that, because we don't have a problem of poverty really. We have a problem of we have got lots of resources, but it's we need people to lead and manage those resources and tell us
I
where
mean, I
to.
mean, yeah, that's a really important point. One of these
Mm,
things that I see so much online right now is this: there is that are promoting their courses to help make people more affluent, as if we don't have enough affluent Muslims in the Ummah. The problem is not that the Ummah doesn't have money. We have billionaires in many of these, Arab countries. We have billionaires,
mm,
all over. But the problem is that the understanding is what's missing. The understanding is void. Do you understand? And these people will come, no, some of the Sahaba were rich. Yeah, the Sahaba, some of them were rich, but they had the right understanding. Look at Abdurrahman ibn Auf, for example.
mm,
These people, their understanding, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, their understanding was the primary, that was the core, and then the wealth. And this is the problem, that people think that, oh yeah, just by having wealth and making the ummah richer, all of a sudden we're gonna gain victory, and that's just a
mm,
complete,
mm.
it's a that's a fallacy.
Yeah, needs to be coupled to vision, and having that umatic vision. Speaking of which, you're going to be joining us on Sunday, inshallah. Having a mega live stream with like 20 different speakers, multiple different organizations, showing that unity, that hope, that sharing in the victory of our Syrian brothers and sisters. Your victory is our victory. We're going to have Palestinian brothers there, Uyghur brothers there, Kashmiri, inshallah, people from India, Pakistan, different areas of the world, showing this collective, ummatic kind of happiness and answering some questions, or inshallah. We're taking a lot of your time. Really appreciate it, bro. And I'm gonna bug you to do this a bit more regularly, to keep getting not quite live updates from Syria, but recorded updates from Syria, inshallah. Uh, inshallah, and then
No problem, man.
for the live stuff, we can follow you, inshallah, get live updates from Syria, and support all the projects that you're doing, inshallah, and hope you'll share more and more opportunities for us to make an impact there on the ground, inshallah. So
Inshallah.
we'll end it there, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan for you joining, and Jazakallah khairan to you at home for watching. If you like this podcast, give it a like and a share, and as usual, subscribe to be at the front of the queue for the next one we drop. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.